In this tutorial, I'll go over some basics about using color ramps to symbolize data in QGIS. There are a few ways that you can access the color ramp options in QGIS. Of these, I find it easiest to just access them from either the Layer Styling panel or by going to the Layer Properties and then clicking on the Symbology tab. So for my elevation raster dataset here, I'll select it, and then I can either click on this button to access the layer styling panel, or I could right click and go to properties and then just make sure my symbology tab was selected. I'm just going to work from the layer styling panel. And so right now, my data set is rendered using single band gray. In order for the color ramp options to appear, I would need to either select paletted, unique values, or single band pseudo color. Since this is an elevation data set, single band pseudo color would really be my best option in most cases. So I'm going to select that. And you'll see that QGIS has selected a color ramp. If I click on this right button, I have other options under my favorite section here. I can also easily choose to invert the color ramp if I'd like to do that. If I go down to all color ramps, there are even more options here, but this isn't actually all of the color ramps that are available to you. You can actually go to create new color ramp, and you'll see that down here you have a few different collections of color ramps that give you even more options. So I'm just going to select CPT City here. And you'll see here there are 590 different ramps you can choose from. Now, all of these might not be appropriate for your data set depending on what it is. Like a lot of these would be more suitable for visualizing class data. But you'll see over on the left there are different subgroups to make it easier to find one that's most suitable to your data set. So if I look over here, I see there's a topography subsection. I'll just click on that, choose one of these. And then my data is visualized using a standard elevation color gradient. Now, let's say I wanted to create a new color ramp from scratch. I would just select Create New Color Ramp, and then leave Gradient selected and click OK. And here you can select your starting and ending colors for your ramp. And if I'd like to add additional color stops, I can just double click anywhere on the ramp I'd like to add one. And then I've got a new color stop here. I can use one of these different options to add a color. I can also adjust the opacity at a particular color stop as well. And you'll notice that whenever a color stop is selected, it has a black outline. So just make sure that when you're changing a color, you have the right stop selected. So another way that you can change the color along your color ramp is to use this plot section at the bottom. And on this, you have these different lines showing hue, saturation, lightness, and opacity. And you'll see that each of these different points corresponds to each of your color stops at the top. So you can just drag one of these up or down to adjust these values. And so this might be handy if, say, you wanted to adjust the lightness of your color values so that they're going from lighter on one end of your color ramp or darker. And you can do that with any of these different options here. Just be careful when you're moving these points. If you move to the left or right, it is moving the actual color stop location, which you may or may not want to do. So once you've developed a color scheme and you're happy with it, you can choose to save it. And if you'd like, you can add it to your favorites. And then it will show up in this list whenever you're symbolizing data, it will be there for you if you'd like to use that. You can also access the color ramp options using the Style Manager. And this is where you can actually delete your color schemes if you've decided you don't want one anymore, which this is pretty ugly, so I'm going to delete it. And you can also access all of these other options that are available through the layers panels too. Now let's take a look at a vector data set. So for a vector data set, in order for the color ramp options to appear, you need to change the renderer to either categorized or graduated. In this case, I'm going to use graduated because I want to symbolize a few different classes based on a particular attribute value. So I'm going to visualize population, and we'll use natural breaks and 4 classes. And so QGIS has performed the classification using this color ramp here. I can change this the same way I made changes for the raster data set before. The way I believe it works for when QGIS is classifying data using a gradient color ramp, I'm assuming that they're just dividing the color ramp into 4 pieces in this case, since I have 4 classes, and then just taking the color at each of those different points. That being said, you can use one of those pre-existing collections like Color Brewer. And this actually has colors that you can pick, and you can choose the specific number of colors you want included so that they correspond to your number of classes. Just be aware that you aren't able to edit these Color Brewer color schemes. You can actually edit the CPT City color ramps. In order to do that, though, you will need to, if you select one, and then you click on Save as Standard Gradient, and then click OK. And then when you do that, you can just click on it, and then that will take you to this Edit Color Ramp screen. So those are just a few basics for getting started with color ramps.